Well, we're going to end with the last and probably most important principle of all, and that is speak and act as you would wish children to speak and act. Children can listen to us, but when they watch us, they see what grown-ups do, and they want to be grown up, so they will imitate us in every possible way. If we use bad language, they use bad language. If we hit, they hit. If we bite, they bite. Every single piece of our behavior is observed very carefully, and we can see it coming back at us in some very unfortunate ways if we're not very, very careful. But let's look at this with a light touch. We're going to put on a dramatization of the story, Caps for Sale. Once there was a peddler who sold caps, but he was no ordinary peddler selling his wares on his back. He carried them on the top of his head. First his own checked cap, then a stack of brown caps, then a stack of white caps, and on the very top a stack of red caps. And he walked up and down very carefully, so as not to upset his caps. And as he walked up the street, he called, "Caps, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap." And as he walked back down the street, he called, "Caps, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap." Well, one day, he couldn't sell any caps. Nobody wanted even a red cap. So he thought to himself, I think I'll go for a walk in the country. And he walked slowly, slowly out of town so as not to upset his caps. He walked for a long time until he came to a big tree. That looks like a good place for a rest, thought he, and he sat down slowly, slowly so as not to upset his caps. But before he went to sleep, he felt to be sure they were all there. First his checked cap, then a stack of brown caps, then a stack of white caps, then a stack of gray caps, and the red caps on the very top. They were all there, so he leaned back against the tree and went to sleep. He slept for a long time. And when he awoke, he was refreshed and rested. But before he stood up, he felt to be sure that his own caps were in place. But all he felt was his own checked cap. My goodness! He looked to the right of him, no caps. He looked to the left of him, no caps. He looked behind the tree, no caps. And then he looked up into the tree, and on every branch sat a monkey. And on every monkey was a brown or a white or a gray or a red cap. Well, the peddler didn't know what to do. He looked at the monkeys, and the monkeys looked at the peddler. And then he shook his finger at them and said, "You monkeys, you, give me back my caps." But the monkeys only shook their fingers at the peddler and said, well, this made the peddler quite angry. So he shook both hands at the monkeys and said, "You monkeys, you give me back my caps." But the monkeys only shook their hands back at the peddler and said, well, the peddler was even angrier. So he stamped his foot at the monkeys and he said, "You monkeys, you must give me back my caps." But the monkeys only stamped their foot and said, well, He was so angry by now that he stamped both his feet and he said in a very cross voice, "You monkeys, you give me back my caps." But the monkeys only stamped both their feet back at the peddler and said, well, the peddler didn't know what to do, so he reached for his own cap, threw it on the ground, and started to walk away. And with that, all the brown caps and the white caps and the gray caps and the red caps came tumbling down out of the tree. So the peddler picked up his caps and put them back on his head. First his own checked cap, and then the brown caps, and the white caps, and the gray caps, and the red caps on the very top. And he walked back into town, slowly, slowly, calling, "Caps, caps for sale, 50 cents a cap." And that's the story of the peddler and the caps. Now, can we use that with children? Of course, it's a great book. Do you know that book was published in 1940 and is translated into 12 languages and was used at the commencement speech of the Stanford Business School in the mid-90s? It really gets around. So not only is it a great story to enact with children, but you can see how extensive the activities are that could surround it. Figuring out how to make the caps, painting them. Casey did a beautiful job. And all the surrounding kind of information and vocabulary that went into it. But for our purposes, how does it work? What did you learn about imitation? I think that the peddler's a pretty strong role model.
I think children do what they see you do. So even before video cameras, I remember having a child role play me reading a book, and exactly my nuances, how I held the book, what I said, was better than being videotaped. So it's a very powerful source of learning.
It is. Anybody else have an example of children imitating their behavior? Yes.
I watch a lot of babies in my care, and over the years, my 2- and 3-year-olds, they'll go and grab a baby out of the toy box, they'll grab a burp cloth, they'll put it on the shoulder, they'll pretend they're burping the baby. So they're copying everything they have seen me do with all the other infants.
Absolutely. So we have to be very careful. Anybody seen behavior that you may have exhibited that you don't like in yourself and you saw come back in a child? Well, maybe we don't want to talk about that in public. But it happens, doesn't it?